In 1980, a pudgy left-handed pitcher from a tiny town in Mexico broke onto the scene and took the baseball world by storm. He didn't look like an athlete. He looked more like the everyday fan. But he dominated hitters with a devastating screwball on his way to winning Rookie of the Year, the Cy Young Award, starting pitcher in the All-Star Game, and winning the World Series with the Dodgers in 1981. This is the story of Fernando Valenzuela. And look, there are plenty of videos on YouTube about him, but I recently read Eric Sherman's book, Daybreak at Chavez Ravine, and it lit a real fire in me, and I just wanted to add Fernando to my catalog. Quick interjection here while editing. I originally recorded this video in August of 2024. Today is October 25th, and Fernando sadly passed away 3 days ago. I left the rest of this video as is, so forgive me if I use phrasing as if Fernando were still living. To understand Fernando and the impact that he had, you have to first understand the relationship that the Dodgers had with the Latino population in LA leading up to 1980. Now, I'm probably going to say things that most people listening already know, but bear with me. The Dodgers relocated to LA from Brooklyn in 1958. Walter O'Malley needed to replace the aging Ebbets Field in New York. The building was old and there was a severe lack of parking space, which wasn't an issue when construction began in 1912. But by the 1950s, it became a big problem, and the seating capacity was only 35,000. They needed a new stadium, and New York politicians were playing hardball, pun intended. After many years of haggling, O'Malley threatened to take the Dodgers elsewhere. I think the New York politicians thought it was a bunch of fluff, and in the end, O'Malley did exactly that. The city of LA offered him a sweetheart deal to build a new stadium in Chavez Ravine, a nice little location in the hills outside of LA. There was only one problem. People were living there. A lot of people. Latinos, primarily. Originally, the local government planned to use the Chavez Ravine land to construct public housing projects, which would have provided expansive housing, schools, and a college for the local Latino population. However, after Norris Polson was elected mayor of LA in 1953, everything changed. Public housing projects suddenly became synonymous with socialist ideology. And remember, this is the early 1950s, the height of McCarthyism and the Red Scare. If you aren't familiar with what that means, basically the U.S. went nutso, afraid of anything that smelled like a communist agenda. Many careers and lives were ruined because of extreme paranoia. The city bought back the Chavez Ravine land at a dramatically reduced cost under the stipulation that it was only to be used for a public purpose. I'm sure some people thought that a, quote, public purpose meant schools or possibly housing, but no, it would become a ballpark. Palo Verde, La Loma, and Bishop were excised. Over 1,800 families were living there and removed, some by force. If you want to dive deeper, Google Chavez Ravine Black Friday. The city of LA used eminent domain and a strong hand to effectively force the Latino population out of Chavez Ravine so the Dodgers could build their new stadium. I'm simplifying a complex problem here for the sake of brevity, but let's just say it left many Latinos angry, and rightfully so, feeling abused by their government, and they would hold a grudge against the Dodgers organization for years. For many, many years, many Latinos outright refused to attend Dodger games. Some might say that Fernando Valenzuela came on the scene at the perfect time. He would help heal that rift between the Latino community and the Dodgers. I don't think it's a stretch to say that an entire generation of Latino Dodger fans became fans because of Fernando. Fernando Valenzuela was born in a small town in November of 1960 in a small town, Huaquila, a small town in Navajoa, Mexico. It's located in the southern part of the state of Sonora in the Mayo Valley. Huaquila is a small town in a very lightly populated city. Today, Navajoa has about 97 people per square mile. That's very few people. About half the density of Anchorage, Alaska. Why am I going into so much detail about where he came from? Because His town, his family is a huge part of the story. He was the 12th kid in his family, 12th. Born in a town with dirt roads, no running water, no electricity. There wouldn't be electricity in his town for another decade. His family lived in an adobe house. 5 sisters slept in one room, 7 brothers in another. Talk about humble beginnings. He started playing baseball on a dirt field with his brothers at a young age, and by the time he was 13, he was part of the town's little team along with 6 of his brothers. He was actually one of 8 Valenzuelas on that team. There was Rafael pitching, Francisco at second, Daniel at short, Gerardo at third, Manuel in the outfield, and Avelino pitching in relief. There was an Enrique Valenzuela, unrelated to the brothers, who was the catcher. Fernando played first base and occasionally pitched. Still, these games were so rural and so small. How did he ever make it to Los Angeles? Despite no real instruction, Fernando developed as a pitcher. By the time he was 15, the manager of Los Mayos de Navajoa, a professional team in the Mexican Pacific League, Avelino Lucero, noticed him. It's not clear if he was out scouting or how exactly he found Fernando, but Lucero signed Fernando for $80 a month for a 3-month season in the Mexican minor leagues. By then he was 17 and finally attracted the attention of a major league scout, the Dodgers' famous Mike Brito. Brito, who passed away in 2022, became a Dodger legend. He would become lifelong friends with Fernando and, obviously, the scout who signed him. The Dodgers paid his Yucatan team $120,000 for the rights to sign Fernando, more than any previous player. Fernando's first stop in the U.S. would be Lodi, the Dodgers' Class A team in the California League. He pitched 24 innings in 3 games before the season ended and spent the end of the 1979 season in the Arizona Fall Instructional League. And it was here that Bobby Castillo changed everything when he taught Fernando how to throw a screwball. The screwball would become the lefty's signature pitch. Once he developed it and perfected the delivery, Fernando would ride his screwball into the major leagues. The screwball is a hard pitch to master. Carl Hubbell, Warren Spahn, and Christy Mathewson are some of the all-time greats who threw screwballs. I also have to mention the great Willie Hernandez, who is special to me as part of the '84 Tigers. A screwball confuses hitters because it acts like a curveball but breaks in reverse. So for a left-handed pitcher, it will break right to left. In Fernando's case, his screwball also had significant downward action with a sharp break. If we look at Fernando's stats in San Antonio, we can see he got plenty of innings to work on the pitch. He threw 174 innings with respectable numbers as he honed his screwball with the guidance of Castillo. He finished the season in San Antonio on a 7-0 run and a 0.87 ERA over that stretch. In his final 35 innings, he did not allow a single earned run. By the end of 1980, he was ready. Fernando got the call up in September with 23 games left on the Dodgers' schedule. The Dodgers were in a late-season battle with the Astros. Here are the standings on September 15, 1980, when Fernando made his debut. Deadlocked at 82-61 with 19 games to go. As the Dodgers and Astros battled, Fernando took on increasingly important innings, as his game log shows. He was pitching in relief every few days, and over 10 appearances, 17 2/3 of an inning, he gave up 0 earned runs. If you're on YouTube and looking at this game log, you may notice the last row in the table, his 10th appearance. It was game 163 for the Dodgers. LA and Houston went head-to-head in a 3-game series to end the regular season. The Dodgers took 2 of 3 to finish deadlocked. They had to have a 1-game tiebreaker. Eric Sherman goes into depth on game 163 in his book. Lasorda could have started Fernando. Many of his teammates wanted Fernando to get the ball, but Lasorda went with the struggling veteran Dave Goltz. A decision that sealed their fate, as Goltz gave up 4 runs in 3 innings, followed by Rick Sutcliffe giving up 3 in only a third of an inning, and the season was over for LA. Even with his success at the end of 1980, there still wasn't too much fan excitement about Fernando heading into 1981. Not yet. Heading into opening day of 1981, Fernando wasn't even slotted in the 5-man rotation. Due to a crazy set of circumstances, the day before opening day, all 5 starting pitchers were suddenly unavailable. Jerry Royce had strained his calf. Bert Hooton had just had an ingrown toenail removed. Bob Welch had a bone spur in his elbow. And Dave Goltz and Rick Sutcliffe had just thrown exhibition games before opening day. So Lasorda almost had no choice and gave the ball to Fernando, hoping to get a few innings out of him. The first Dodgers rookie ever to start on opening day, and it went pretty well. A complete game shutout. It was the beginning of one of the most dominant runs of victories to start a pitcher's career. A string of 8 complete games, 8 wins, 4 earned runs for a 0.50 ERA, and 68 strikeouts to only 17 walks for a 0.83 whip. By the end of April, fans were wearing homemade Fernando shirts. MLB merchandise was not as fast a manufacture or find in 1981. Los Angeles was dying for anything Fernando, and there just wasn't anything available. Homemade t-shirts, homemade buttons, and signs. It reminds me of the bird phenomenon in Detroit a few years earlier. There were many homemade Mark Fidrich shirts in the Detroit area. The Detroit News even had a special iron-on bird decal that you can still find on eBay. As things went along, Fernando was getting more and more pressure from the media and fans, and Dusty Baker loved this guy. He was pivotal in protecting Fernando. Dusty's mother taught Spanish, and his sister was a missionary in Colombia, so he was bilingual and really went the extra mile to help Latino players. Dusty even bought Fernando his first suit, citing how he was mentored by Hank Aaron and Bob Uecker. Rick Monday also deserves credit for taking a leading role in protecting Fernando. He said he thought of Fernando as his little brother. I also want to note Jaime Jarrín was the LA Dodgers Spanish radio broadcaster and is called the first interpreter in the game. It's worth noting that Jaime did his job well. He made Fernando comfortable and eased the burden off everyone else with the high demands for Fernando interviews and quotes, and he did it all without placing a single bet. Jaime Jarrín would eventually win the Ford Frick Award from the National Baseball Hall of Fame and become a celebrity himself. Anyhow, it was estimated that Dodger Stadium drew about 5% Latino fans in the years preceding Fernando Mania. Keep in mind, this is in a city that the U.S. Census says is 48% Latino. The Dodgers were not connecting with a huge part of their city. Suddenly, in the summer of '81, Latinos came out in droves. Fernando Mania was spreading like wildfire. Tickets were selling out in advance on days that Fernando was scheduled to pitch, both in LA and on the road. Mariachi bands were playing outside the stadium. Mexican flags were being waved in the outfield. Insert Vin Scully video here. The Mexican radio broadcast of Dodger games went from a 0.3 share to 7.8. That is, a 25x growth? Radio expanded to include 65 radio stations in Mexico, reaching every corner of the country. Unfortunately, there was a strike in 1981 that halted play from mid-June through July, and during the 50-day strike, Fernando went back to Mexico. He pitched in exhibition games and gave pitching clinics in cities like Tijuana, Navajo, and others. His agent, Antonio DeMarco, was approached by both MGM and Columbia Pictures about contracting for his life story. The guy had only been in the league for like a year at this point. He had won a total of 12 major league games at the strike, and people wanted to make a movie about him. When the strike ended, it was decided to split the season in 2, and anyone in first place at the start of the strike would be in the playoffs. Fortunately for the Dodgers, they were a half game ahead of Cincinnati when play was stopped. When baseball resumed, Fernando put together a very similar second half. In the postseason, Fernando would forever cement his legacy. The Dodgers were down 2-0 versus the Yankees in the World Series. Fernando would get the complete Game 3 win, battling with 146 pitches. The Dodgers would win in 6. Similar to Ralph Houck's use of Mark Fidrich, Dodgers manager Tommy Lasorda may have abused Fernando's arm. I'm not trying to pass judgment because it was a different era, but it was common enough that Tommy's name became a verb in the league. As in, quote, that pitcher is being Lasorded when being overused. That being said, Fernando seemed to be extremely durable, at least for a while. Fernando threw 285 innings in 1982, and 20% of his starts were on only 3 days of rest. Half of these were after 9-inning complete games. Over a 6-year span from 1982 to 1987, he would throw just under 1,600 innings. That's an average of 266 innings pitched per year. Nobody in MLB has thrown more than 266 innings since Randy Johnson in 1999. And nobody has thrown 285 innings since Charlie Huff in 1987. In 1986, he would win a career-high 21 games and post 20 complete games. Again, different era. I understand that. Finally, in 1988, he went on the DL for the first time in his career. His fastball lost 10 miles per hour, and he was not very effective. He had made 255 consecutive starts. I could not figure out the right Google mojo to see if anyone has surpassed that since. I find it nearly impossible to believe anybody has, to be honest. Fernando would miss that magical 1988 World Series when Kirk Gibson hit that 3-2 slider with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th off Eck. Fernando would battle to regain his greatness, and he'd have a great comeback year in 1996 with an ERA plus of 110 in San Diego. I'm discounting the 145 ERA plus in 94 because it was only 8 games. He would bounce between the Dodgers, the Angels, Orioles, Phillies, Padres, and finish in 1997 with a forgettable 22 innings for St. Louis. His career numbers are not going to get him into the National Baseball Hall of Fame, but he is in the Mexican Baseball Hall of Fame, the Caribbean Hall of Fame, and the California Sports Hall of Fame. Since 2003, Fernando has been part of the Dodgers Spanish broadcasting team. Fernando has also been part of the coaching staff of Team Mexico during the World Baseball Classic in 2006, 2009, 2013, and 2017. He also owns a Mexican baseball team as of 2017 called the Tigres de Quintana Roo. He is extremely popular, as you can imagine, in Los Angeles, as he should be. LA officially retired his number 34 on August 11, 2023. To underscore his importance in the Latino community, consider this. The Mexican Baseball League retired his jersey number 34 from the entire league in 2019, similar to how MLB retired 42 in honor of Jackie Robinson. That should tell you all you need to know. Thanks for your time. Take care.